The air hangs, a viscous weight, 112 degrees. The instruments register it clinically. But the sensation is less measurement, more suffocation. Humidity clings to my skin like a shroud. I adjust the collar of my linen shirt, a futile gesture. The bunker's ventilation system, if it ever functioned, is long defunct. Dust motes, thick as pollen, dance in the weak light filtering from the single high-placed lamp. Burnt sienna and umber fivin, the colors of decay, the colors of this place. Another bone fragment. Tibia, likely. I place it in the designated tray, label it with the accession number, the date, the location of recovery. The routine is a shield, a bulwark against the encroaching. Something, I don't name it. Naming implies understanding, and there is nothing to understand here, only to record. The cat moves. It doesn't walk, precisely. More like flows. A ripple in the stillness. It has no eyes, no visible ears, no nose. Just smooth, gray fur, and an unsettling certainty in its movements. It navigates the labyrinthine corridors of the bunker with a precision that defies logic. Its purr, a low, constant thrum, vibrates through the floor, through my bones an amplifier, they said. It intensifies whatever I am feeling right now. It amplifies the isolation, the yearning. Fabric, a soft, tearing sound. I register it, not as a distinct noise but as a pressure against my temples. It's always there, a subtle rasp beneath the hum of the ventilation, the drip of condensation. It's become part of the background, like the ache in my lower back. A memory flickers, a ballroom. Chandeliers, a waltz. The scent of lilies. I push it down, fatigue. That's all it is. The heat, the endless cataloguing. I find the doll nestled amongst a pile of discarded equipment, porcelain. Its face is delicately painted, a frozen smile stretched across its lips. Its stillness is jarring, a mockery of the chaos surrounding it. It doesn't belong here. Everything here is broken, fragmented, decaying. This is pristine. Too pristine. I pick it up, the porcelain cool against my fingertips. It's heavier than it looks. The compass lies on a nearby table, its needle spinning erratically. It is a peculiar object to find in a bunker, a relic of a time when people believed in direction, in purpose. Now, it merely points toward the nearest source of decay. A morbid guide. I ignore it. The doll feels wrong. It mimics my movements. A slight tilt of the head, a subtle shift in posture, a childish imitation. I feel a prickle of irritation. The fabric tears again, louder this time. It's coming from the doll. Or near it. I scan the room, my gaze sweeping across the rows of labeled trays, the stacks of forgotten documents, the shadows that cling to the corners. The purr of the cat intensifies, a palpable vibration against my chest. I set the doll down on the table. It remains motionless. Another memory. Brief. Sharp. A woman's voice singing a lullaby, a field of wheat swaying in the wind, gone. Like smoke. I return to my cataloging, the tibia, the femur, the ulna. Each bone a fragment of a life lost, a story unfinished. The fabric continues its relentless rasp, a constant reminder of the fragility of everything. I feel a sudden chill, despite the oppressive heat. I glance back at the table. The doll's head slowly turns. A fraction of an inch, its painted eyes lock onto mine. A faint, guttural growl emanates from its porcelain form. The doll's head slowly turns. A fraction of an inch. Its painted eyes lock onto mine. A faint, guttural growl emanates from its porcelain form. The sound vibrates in my teeth, a physical tremor more than an auditory event. It's impossible. Porcelain doesn't twin growl. I force myself to breathe. Slow, deliberate inhales and exhales. The air, thick enough to taste, coats my tongue with a gritty film. Fatigue. It's the heat, the lack of sleep, the endless parade of bone fragments. It's playing tricks on me. I run a hand across my forehead, wiping away the sheen of sweat. The linen clings to my skin, damp and uncomfortable. The doll mirrors the action. A perfect, unsettling replica. It lifts its porcelain hand, mimicking the gesture. The precision is mocking. The compass on the table spins faster, a frantic dance of the needle. It's not pointing north anymore. It's drawn to something. Something here, a metallic scraping sound like fingernails on slate, drifts from the corner of the room. I scan the rows of labeled trays, the stacks of crumbling documents, the oppressive shadows. The cat, a ripple of grey fur, flows silently toward the sound. Its purr intensifies, a low thrum that vibrates in my sternum. It's not a comforting sound anymore, it's a warning. Another memory. More than a flicker this time. A ballroom, yes, but the details sharpen. The scent of lilies is overpowering, cloying, a man's hand in mine, warm and firm. A waltz. The music, a melancholic melody played on a distant piano. I strain to grasp it, to hold on to it, but it dissolves like sugar in water. The frustration is a physical ache in my temples. I push the memory down. It's irrelevant. It's a phantom limb, a ghost of a life I never lived. Or perhaps, a life I have lived. The recurring nature of these fragments, it's unsettling. I glance at the doll again. Its head is still tilted, its painted eyes fixed on mine. It's waiting. The metallic scraping returns, closer this time. It seems to be coming from the walls, from the very structure of the bunker. The burnt sienna walls seem to be breathing, expanding and contracting with each rasp. The air grows heavier, pressing down on me, stealing the oxygen from my lungs. I feel a rising panic, a cold knot forming in my stomach. I try to rationalize. The bunker is old. The metal is corroded. The sound is simply the result of structural stress. But the explanation feels hollow, inadequate. The doll's imitation is too precise, too deliberate. It's not random, it's intentional. The cat lets out a low hiss, a sound that seems to vibrate directly into my skull. It arches its back, its fur bristling, and turns its head toward the doll. It doesn't have eyes, but I feel its gaze locked onto the porcelain figure. The purr shifts, becoming a discordant rumble, a mechanical groan. I reach for the compass, intending to examine it more closely, but as my fingers brush against the cold metal, I recoil. The needle is spinning wildly, a blur of silver against the tarnished brass. It's pointing directly at the doll. The metallic scent is stronger now, acrid and sharp. It stings my nostrils, burning the back of my throat. It's the smell of rust, of decay, of something artificial. I feel a sudden overwhelming urge to leave, to escape this place, to breathe fresh air, but I'm rooted to the spot, paralyzed by a growing sense of dread. The doll lifts its hand again, mirroring my own gesture of reaching for the compass. It's no longer a subtle imitation. It's a perfect replication, down to the smallest detail. The painted smile on its face seems to widen, becoming a grotesque parody of joy. I wipe the sweat from my brow again, a desperate attempt to regain control. The doll mirrors the action, and this time, as I lift my hand, the porcelain figure lifts its own, perfectly synchronized. The metallic scraping intensifies, a cacophony of noise that fills the bunker. The air shimmers, distorting the light, and the doll smiles. The compass needle's spasm felt like a jolt to my arm, a visceral shudder that resonated through the metal casing. It swung wildly, then settled, unwavering, pointing directly at the wall. Not the sienna-stained wall I'd been staring at moments before, but a section I hadn't noticed. A new growth. It wasn't tea to crack, not a discoloration. It benoved, a slow, rhythmic pulse, like a diseased heart beneath the concrete. The fabric of my sleeve snagged as I pulled away from the table, the sound a sharp furcade against the oppressive silence. Another tear, then another, as I stumbled forward, drawn to the pulsing patch. The cat, a silent shadow, flowed ahead, its form indistinct in the dim light. It didn't slink. It became the shadows, a ripple of gray against the umber and burnt sienna. The air thickened, a palpable pressure against my skin. The heat, always a smothering blanket, intensified, clinging to me like a shroud. 112 degrees, it felt like breathing through a furnace. The memories surged again, a torrent of fragmented images. A garden, vibrant, with color, the scent of roses, sweet and intoxicating. A child's laughter. Then the abrupt severing, a hand reaching, grasping, then vanishing. The pain, a searing brand on my soul. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting the onslaught, the yearning, a physical ache in my chest. Stop it. I repeated the mantra, a desperate attempt to anchor myself to the present. The metallic scraping returned, louder now, a chorus of whispers echoing through the bunker. It wasn't tea coming from the walls anymore, it was subit within them. A subterranean groan, as if the earth itself was in agony. The cat paused, its form shimmering in the distorted light. I couldn't see its eyes, but I felt its gaze, a palpable weight on my back. A warning, I took a tentative step toward the pulsating growth. The concrete felt slick beneath my boots, coated with a film of moisture. The smell was overwhelming, a sickly sweet odor, like rotting fruit mixed with something metallic. The compass needle vibrated violently, its brass casing humming with an unnatural energy. The distant footsteps began, faint at first, then growing louder, closer. Have someone I say was in the bunker with me? Or something. Another memory. A ballroom, yes, but this time I saw the faces. Blurred, indistinct, but there. A woman in a crimson gown, her laughter echoing across the room. A man, his hand warm in mine, his eyes filled with… what? Sorrow. Regret. The image fractured, dissolving into a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds. The doll. I remembered the doll. It was there, in the ballroom, watching, always watching. I forced myself to focus on the growth. It was spreading, tendrils of fungal matter creeping across the concrete. The color was wrong, not the earthy brown of mold, but a sickly, iridescent green. A pulsating, unnatural hue. The fabric of my trousers ripped as I shifted my weight. The sound a jarring counterpoint to the subterranean groans. I felt a tremor run through the floor, a subtle vibration that resonated in my bones. The footsteps were closer now, distinct, heavy, deliberate. Heavy were coming. I glanced over my shoulder but saw nothing. The shadows danced, playing tricks on my eyes. The cat emitted a low, guttural rumble, a sound that vibrated in my sternum. It wasn't a purr. It was a lament. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and touched the fungal growth. It was warm, moist, and strangely soft. A wave of nausea washed over me, a dizzying sensation that threatened to topple me. The memories intensified, a relentless assault on my sanity, a loving embrace, a sudden violent separation. A porcelain face smiling. The footsteps stopped, right behind me. I froze, my heart pounding against my ribs. The air grew heavy, suffocating. The metallic scent intensified, burning the back of my throat. I wanted to scream, to run, to escape this nightmare, but I was paralyzed, trapped in this subterranean hell. The compass needle spun wildly, then locked, pointing directly at the fungal growth. And then, from the pulsing mass, a voice, a whisper, faint at first, then growing louder, clearer. Genevieve. The whisper slithered into my consciousness, a tendril of sound clinging to the edges of my awareness. Genevieve? It wasn't a voice I recognized, yet it resonated within me, a phantom echo of something lost. The compass needle, still fixed on the pulsing growth, vibrated against my palm, a frantic pulse mirroring the tremor in my own limbs. The air thickened, pressing down on me, a suffocating weight of heat and humidity. 112 degrees. Each breath felt like drawing air through a damp cloth. The ballroom. It flooded back, sharper now, more defined. The scent of roses, cloying and sweet, assaulted my nostrils. I saw the chandeliers glittering like frozen starlight, reflecting in polished marble floors. The music tuned a waltz, lilting and melancholic, drifted from unseen speakers, a distorted echo of a forgotten elegance. The crimson gown. I could almost feel the silk against my skin, the weight of the jewels at my throat. A hand, warm and strong, clasped mine. His eyes, I strained to see them, but they remained veiled, obscured by a film of shadow, sorrow, regret, or simply the vacant gaze of a stranger. The cat shifted, its form blurring against the encroaching memories. A low rumble emanated from its throat, a vibration that settled deep within my bones. Not a purr, but a resonance, an amplification of the swirling emotions, threatening to consume me. The photograph. I hadn't noticed it before, lying half, hidden beneath a pile of crumbling debris. It was faded, the edges brittle, the image blurred with age. A group of people dressed in the finery of the Edwardian era stared back at me. Their faces were indistinct, lost in a haze of sepia tones, but there was a familiarity, a haunting echo of recognition. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the fragile surface. The music swelled, a discordant crescendo that threatened to shatter the fragile stillness of the bunker. The doll, I remembered it now, standing silently in the corner of the ballroom. Its porcelain face impassive, its eyes fixed on me. It hadn't moved then, hadn't betrayed any sign of awareness, but now I felt its gaze, a cold, unwavering pressure on the back of my neck. It shifted slightly, its head tilting almost imperceptibly. A mimicry. It was mimicking my movements. A wave of nausea churned within me, a visceral reaction to the unsettling realization. The fabric of my glove tore, a faint fodder lost in the rising tide of sound. The burnt sienna of the walls seemed to deepen, darkening to a sickly ochre, the color of decay and despair. The metallic scent intensified, clinging to the back of my throat, a taste of rust and ruin. The footsteps they hadn't stopped. They were circling, closing in. I risked a glance over my shoulder, but saw nothing. Only the dancing shadows, playing tricks on my eyes, twisting familiar shapes into grotesque parodies of reality. The cat emitted another rumble, a mournful lament that resonated with the ache in my soul. The photograph vibrated in my hand, the image blurring, swirling. A single word, whispered in a language I didn't understand, drifted from the faded paper. It wasn't a shout, not a clear articulation. It was a breath, a sigh, a fragment of a forgotten tongue, a resonance that seemed to originate not from the photograph itself, but from the depths of my own memory. The compass needle spun wildly, a frantic dance of brass and steel, then settled, pointing not at the fungal growth, but directly at the photograph. The whisper came again, clearer this time, a single syllable hanging in the stifling air, a sevilla. The shadows, they weren't right, peripheral at first, a flicker in the corner of my eye, easily dismissed as fatigue or the play of light on the crumbling walls, but they thickened, coalesced. Not into distinct shapes, not yet, but a swirling mass of darkness that seemed to writhe with a life of its own. The burnt sienna of the walls pulsed, a subtle undulation that mirrored the tremor in my hands. 112 degrees. Still, the air hung thick and stagnant, a suffocating blanket woven from dust and decay. The cat, usually a silent, unsettling presence, became a whirlwind of agitated movement. It darted between my legs, a silent, frantic plea. No eyes, yet it navigated the bunker with an uncanny certainty, its form a blur of dark fur against the deepening shadows. A low rumble, deeper than any I'd heard before, resonated from its throat. It wasn't a purr, it was a vibration, a tremor that seemed to emanate not from the creature itself, but from the very foundations of the bunker. Thrum, thrum. Asterisk, the sound burrowed into my skull, amplifying the rising tide of unease. The compass spun, a frantic, chaotic dance of brass and steel. The needle, previously fixed on the fungal growth, now gyrated wildly, as if possessed. It swung from wall to wall, a desperate search for a point of equilibrium in a reality that was rapidly dissolving. The rip of fabric echoed in my ears, sharper this time, as my glove tore further, a tiny, insignificant wound that felt like a harbinger of something far worse. I tried to ignore it, to focus on the compass, but the shadows were encroaching, pressing in on me, stealing the light. The photograph. The word Fadelala lingered in my mind, a phantom echo of a forgotten language. I clutched it tighter, the brittle paper crinkling beneath my fingers. The image seemed to shift, the sepia tones swirling, the faces of the Edwardian figures blurring into an indistinguishable mass. A low hum, a guttural drone, began to emanate from the photograph itself. A resonance that seemed to vibrate within my bones. Tara, Hatara. Asterisk, it was a sound that spoke of ancient things, of forgotten rituals, of a darkness that predated humanity. The walls, they weren't solid, not anymore. I pressed my hand against the concrete, and it yielded slightly, a subtle give that sent a jolt of icy fear through my veins. The surface felt warm, damp, like skin. The shadows deepened, swirling into more defined shapes. I saw glimpses of movement, fleeting impressions of something vast and inhuman lurking just beyond the periphery of my vision. The cat hissed, a sharp, guttural expulsion of air that was almost a scream. Cess, asterisk, my breath hitched in my throat. The air grew heavier, thicker, pressing down on me with suffocating force. The scent of roses, cloying and sweet, intensified, mingling with the metallic tang of rust and decay. The music, the waltz, warped, the lilting melody twisting into a discordant, unsettling drone. It felt as though the bunker itself was breathing, inhaling and exhaling with a slow, deliberate rhythm. Then, it solidified. For a fleeting moment, the shadows coalesced into a form, towering, impossibly large. A grotesque parody of a human figure constructed from decaying organic matter and cold, unfeeling metal. I saw glimpses of bone, of rusted gears, of something else, something that defied description. The image shimmered, distorted, then dissolved back into the swirling darkness, leaving behind only the lingering echo of its presence. The guttural hum intensified, a deep, resonant vibration that shook the very foundations of the bunker. Horror. Horror. Asterisk. The purr. It wasn't the reassuring rumble ID initially registered. It was something else. A vibration. Yes, but amplified. Distorted. It resonated not just in my ears, but in my teeth, in the marrow of my bones. Procra. Asterisk. It wasn't comforting. It felt predatory. As if the cat, this eyeless, furred shadow, was feeding on something. On me. The doll. Its movements were a mockery. I shifted, attempting to reorient myself, and the porcelain face mirrored my action with unsettling precision. A slow, deliberate tilt of the head, a twitch of the painted lips. It wasn't mimicking my actions. It was so taunting. Me. A grotesque echo of my own desperation. The sienna walls seemed to press closer, the heat radiating from them a palpable weight. 112 degrees still, the air tasted like dust and regret. The compass spun again. Faster this time. The needle a frantic blur. It tugged, a subtle but insistent pull drawing me forward. I resisted, the phantom memories swirling in my mind twister. The sterile scent of formaldehyde, the cold gleam of surgical instruments, the hollow echo of a closing door. Each life, each ending, a variation on a theme of isolation. Para. Asterisk the cat. Purr intensified, a counterpoint to the frantic dance of the needle. I followed the compass, the floor uneven beneath my boots. The metallic tang of rust grew stronger, mingling with the cloying sweetness of roses. The waltz, warped and discordant, pulsed in my skull, a relentless, maddening rhythm. The cat moved ahead, a silent guide through the deepening labyrinth. Each step echoed, a hollow fifth in the oppressive silence. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the cold dread that always preceded the inevitable. The chamber. It opened before me, a cavernous space filled with strange metallic devices. Tubes and wires snaked across the walls connected to humming machinery that pulsed with an eerie internal light. The air here was thick with the scent of ozone and decay. The compass spun wildly, finally settling on a central platform where a complex array of gears and levers lay exposed. The burnt sienna of the walls seemed to writhe, the color deepening, becoming almost black. Memories, they flooded my mind, fragmented and disjointed. A woman, her face blurred and indistinct. A child, his laughter abruptly silenced. The feeling of being watched, of being studied. Each memory ended the same way, with a sense of profound loss, of utter rejection. Para. Asterisk the cat. Asterisk the cat. Purr resonated with my distress, amplifying the emotional turmoil. It wasn't a sound of comfort. It was a celebration. I stumbled back, the photograph of Ayla slipping from my grasp. It landed face down on the cold concrete floor, the image obscured. The doll's head tilted, a slow, deliberate movement that mirrored my own disorientation. It was as if the bunker itself was feeding on my despair, drawing strength from my pain. The walls seemed to breathe, inhaling and exhaling with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The metallic devices hummed louder, their lights pulsing in time with the warped waltz. The cat approached, rubbing against my leg, the purr intensifying. Profa. Asterisk. It felt like a physical pressure, a crushing weight on my chest. I looked down at the creature, at its eyeless face, and a horrifying realization dawned. It wasn't guiding me. It was driving me towards something, toward an end. The memories coalesced, forming a terrifying picture of a ritual, of a sacrifice. And I knew with a chilling certainty what was expected of me. The purr reached a crescendo, a deafening roar that drowned out all other sounds. It resonated not just in my ears, but in my very soul. The doll's movements became more frantic, a grotesque parody of my own anguish. The compass spun wildly, as if urging me forward toward the inevitable. Asterisk. A triumphant vibration. The purr intensified, a physical pressure against my thighs. Fufush. Hufush. Asterisk. It wasn't just a vibration anymore. It was a carrier, a vessel, and something was riding within it. A susurrus, a whisper, began to weave itself into the sound, too faint to decipher, yet undeniably present. It scratched at the edges of my perception, a phantom itch in my mind. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of ozone and something else, something floral, but decaying like lilies left too long in stagnant water. The compass, momentarily still, began to tremble. The sienna walls pulsed, a slow, sickening rhythm. The dolious head tilted, its painted eyes fixed on me with an unnerving intensity. I felt a constriction in my throat, a primal urge to flee. But the cat, the eyeless guide, pressed closer, its fur rasping against my trousers. Purra, purra. Asterisk, the whispers grew stronger, coalescing into fragmented syllables, a language I didn't recognize yet, felt I should. It started as a hum, a low thrumming beneath the purr. Then, distinct words began to surface, alien and archaic. Asterisk, shala, more, doth asterisk, the sounds vibrated within my skull, echoing the warped waltz that seemed to permeate the very structure of the bunker. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my hands against my ears, but the whispers burrowed deeper, bypassing my eardrums and resonating directly within my brain. The memories, always fragmented, began to shift, to rearrange themselves, as if the forgotten language was unlocking something buried deep within my subconscious. A flicker of a woman's face, whew, not a Ella, but someone else, older, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. The biomechanical construct shimmered into existence, its form less defined than before, more fluid. It wasn't solid, but a swirling mass of wires and decaying organic matter, constantly shifting and reforming. A metallic tang filled the air, sharp and acrid. The doll, its grip tightened on my arm, a surprising strength emanating from its porcelain limbs. Turip. Asterisk, a sound like tearing silk, a brief, sharp protest. As the doll's fingers dug into my skin, I stumbled back, disoriented. The whispers intensified, a chorus of voices now, chanting in unison. Asterisk, shala, more, doth, asterisk. I recognized a pattern, a cadence. It wasn't just language, it was a ritual, a summons. The concrete beneath my feet felt slick, coated with a viscous fungal growth that pulsed with a faint internal light. The burnt sienna walls seemed to writhe, the color deepening, becoming almost black. I could feel the heat radiating from them, oppressive and suffocating. 112 degrees. Still, the air tasted like dust, regret, and something else, something ancient and unsettling. The cat rubbed against my leg, its purr now a deafening roar. Prurra, prurra. Asterisk, it felt like a physical blow, knocking the breath from my lungs. The whispers coalesced, forming a single, clear voice, speaking in the forgotten language. It resonated within my very bones, a chilling pronouncement that bypassed my ears entirely. The bloom is nigh. Asterisk. The pronouncement settled within me, a physical weight pressing against my sternum. The bloom is nigh. Asterisk. The words resonated not just in my ears, but in the marrow of my bones, a vibrational hum that threatened to shatter my teeth. I staggered, the slick fungal growth underfoot offering no purchase. The air, thick and heavy, tasted of dust and the metallic tang of something ancient. My breath hitched, a shallow, desperate gasp. 112 degrees. Still, the biomechanical construct solidified, its form no longer a shifting haze but a grotesque parody of humanoid shape. Rusted metal plates, scarred and pitted, were fused with patches of what looked like desiccated muscle tissue. Vines, thick as pythons and coated in a glistening black residue, writhed across its surface. It towered over me, blotting out the sickly sienna light emanating from the walls. The smell intensified. Ozone, lilies, decay, all coalescing into a nauseating miasma. The whispers escalated, a cacophony of voices swirling around the construct, amplifying its presence. They weren't just words anymore, they were a chorus, a chanting, a ritualistic invocation. The doll, its painted eyes burning into mine, tightened its grip on my arm. Rip. Asterisk, a sound like tearing silk, a sharp, agonizing protest as its porcelain fingers dug deeper into my flesh. It was pulling me, forcing me closer to the construct. My mind struggled to grasp the meaning of the ritual. Fragments of memories surfaced. A woman, as face, older than Adela, her eyes filled with a profound, unbearable sadness. A garden, overgrown and choked with thorns. A feeling of loss. The whispers seemed to be feeding on these fragments, twisting them, amplifying them until they became a chorus of despair. The construct raised a limb, a tangle of wires and decaying flesh, and gestured towards me. The whispers intensified, coalescing into a single, distorted voice that echoed within my skull. The catalyst awaits. The words were not spoken, but imprinted directly onto my consciousness. Panic flared, a cold fire in my gut. I tried to pull away from the doll, but its grip was surprisingly strong, inhumanly so. The cat, the eyeless guide, wound itself around my ankles, its purr now a deafening, vibrating roar. Purr, asterisk, it felt like a physical force, pinning me in place. The compass spun wildly, the needle blurring as it struggled to find a direction. The sienna walls pulsed, the color deepening to a bruised, almost black hue. The fabric ripping became a constant, overwhelming presence. It wasn't just the doll, grip, it was the sound of the very bunker unraveling, of the fabric of reality itself tearing apart. Each individu was a fresh wave of nausea, a searing pain in my temples. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperate to block out the sight, the sound, the smell. A new voice cut through the cacophony, cold and precise, emanating from the construct itself. The cycle nears completion. The bloom requires sustenance. It wasn't a threat, but a statement of fact, devoid of emotion. The whispers seemed to acknowledge this, intensifying their chanting. The cat pressed harder against my legs, its purr vibrating through my bones. I felt a strange detachment, a sense of inevitability. The construct's voice boomed, resonating within my very being. The catalyst awaits. The construct's voice, a seismic tremor within my skull, reverberated. The catalyst awaits. It wasn't a question. It was a pronouncement. A sentence. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, a bitter residue coating my tongue. A cold certainty settled, a glacial weight in my chest. I hadn't understood before, not truly. The fragments, the fleeting glimpses of other lives, the garden choked with thorns, the woman's face etched with a grief that felt older than time itself. They weren't just memories, they were echoes, loops. I was trapped in a cycle, a grotesque ballet of loss and sacrifice. The cat, it shifted, a silent, fluid movement, no eyes to track my gaze, yet it knew. It always knew. It positioned itself between me and the construct, a dark, vibrating shadow against the pulsing sienna walls. Purr, purr. Asterisk, the sound wasn't comforting anymore. It was a pressure, a tangible force pushing against my ribs. The compass spun faster, a frantic blur of brass and glass, the needle twitching like a trapped insect. The fabric ripping became a counterpoint to the cat's purr, a discordant rhythm of decay. A rip, purr, rip, purr. Asterisk, each tear felt like a splinter of ice driven into my soul. The woman's face swam into focus again, clearer this time. Her eyes, pools of infinite sorrow, met mine, not with accusation but with resignation. A slow, agonizing understanding dawned. The catalyst wasn't twine me. It was something given, something offered. A sacrifice. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. My breath hitched, a ragged, desperate gasp. I could feel the heat radiating from the walls, a suffocating blanket pressing down on me. 112 degrees. Still, the air tasted of lilies and rot, a sickeningly sweet perfume that clung to the back of my throat. The doll, a script tightened, a slow, deliberate pressure virip. Asterisk, the sound was sharper now, more defined. A tearing of something precious. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat, a strangled whimper. The memories flooded in, a torrent of fragmented images and emotions. A child's laughter, abruptly silenced, a hand reaching for mine, then withdrawing. A garden, vibrant and full of life, slowly succumbing to a creeping darkness. Each memory was a shard of glass, piercing my heart. The cat's purr intensified, a deafening roar that drowned out the whispers. Proofer, asterisk. It was amplifying my despair, feeding on my sorrow. I understood now. The cat wasn't a guide, it was an amplifier. A conduit for the despair that fueled the bloom. Ella had warned me, hadn't she? Something about cycles and sacrifices. I had dismissed it as the ramblings of a woman lost to grief. I was a fool, a predictable, tragic fool. My hand trembled as I looked down at the cat. It didn't struggle, didn't resist. It simply waited. A profound sadness emanated from it, a palpable wave of grief that washed over me. I felt a connection to it, a shared understanding of the inevitable. It knew its purpose, it accepted its fate. The construct's voice echoed again, a cold, emotionless pronouncement. The catalyst awaits. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the final act. The fabric ripping reached a crescendo, a chaotic symphony of destruction. Rip. 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 Asterisk. My own breathing became slow, deliberate, a measured rhythm against the rising tide of despair then. The cat turned its head. Slowly, deliberately, its featureless face, a smooth expanse of dark fur, seemed to express a profound sadness. The cat turned. A slow, deliberate rotation of its featureless head, a gesture laden with a sorrow that felt ancient, inherited. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't even resignation. It was acceptance, a sickening, quiet surrender. The construct's voice, that seismic tremor within my skull, had ceased. The silence that followed was a physical weight, pressing against my eardrums, amplifying the frantic, erratic pulse in my throat. The compass, momentarily still, shuddered once, then resumed its frantic spin, a brass and glass whirlwind reflecting the sickly sienna light. Fripp. Asterisk, the tearing of the fabric seemed to echo the cat's silent acquiescence. My hand moved. Not of my volition, I wasn't sure. It was a compulsion, a force external to my will, pushing my arm forward. The doll, cold and smooth against my palm, tightened its grip. The heat radiating from the walls intensified, a tangible pressure against my skin. 112 degrees. Still, the lilies and rot perfume, that cloying sweetness, thickened, coating my tongue, making it difficult to swallow. I watched, detached, as my hand guided the cat towards the construct. Prora. Asterisk, a final resonant purr, deeper than any ID heard before, vibrated through the bunker, a mournful lament. It wasn't a sound of distress, but a release. A final expulsion of something. The construct didn't react. It simply absorbed Zushang. The cat moved into its form, disappearing into the decaying organic matter, the biomechanical limbs. A shudder ran through the construct, a visible ripple across its surface, like heat rising from asphalt. The sienna walls pulsed, the light intensifying, the air growing thick with an almost unbearable energy. The ripping of the fabric escalated, a chaotic symphony of destruction that seemed to emanate not just from the walls, but from me. Rip. 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 Asterisk. Each tear felt like a severance, a fragment of my being torn away. Then, it was done. The construct stood fully formed, its decaying organic components now seamlessly integrated with the biomechanical framework. It was taller, more imposing than before. The air crackled with an almost visible energy. The compass fell silent, the needle frozen, pointing directly at the construct. The Thanatomorphosis was complete. The bunker itself seemed to breathe, the walls expanding and contracting with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The construct turned. Slowly, deliberately, its gaze, if it could be called that, settled on me. A single porcelain tear traced a path down the doll, as cheek, a glistening white streak against the sienna. It wasn't a tear of sadness, it was lubrication, a mechanical function. A grotesque parody of emotion. A memory surfaced, not a fragmented glimpse this time, but a complete, vivid scene. A grand ballroom, opulent and lavish, bathed in the warm glow of candlelight. Music, a waltz, filled the air. I was younger, lighter, filled with a joy I hadn't known I possessed. A man, handsome and kind, held me close. His hand warm against my back. He smiled, a genuine, loving smile. And then, a chilling certainty washed over me, a cold wave of dread that extinguished the warmth, the joy, the light. This too would end. It always ended. The heat intensified, pressing down on me, suffocating me. The lilies and rot perfume became almost unbearable, a physical assault on my senses. The construct's form shimmered, distorting the light, blurring the edges of reality. The silence was absolute, broken only by the frantic hammering of my own heart. I braced myself, not for pain, but for the inevitable. For the next cycle, for the next loss, for the next beginning.